before 11 o'clock tonight. Coming up, Charlene White with the ITV Evening News, but from me and the rest of the London team. Bye-bye.
Boris Johnson says he wants all children back at school by the autumn. As the UK threat level is lowered, the Prime Minister says schools are safe and children should return.
I want every child, every pupil, every student back in September, and I'm sure we can get it done.
Also tonight, we take a look at what shoppers have been buying on the socially distanced high street. England rugby.
Doing all that I can.
The 12-year-old protest singer whose passionate plea, "I Just Want to Live," lands him a record deal and a spot on the US charts.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. The Prime Minister today promised to do what he can to get all children in England back in school by September. Boris Johnson was speaking as he launched a £1 billion fund aimed at helping pupils catch up with the learning they've missed while being away from class. His promise came as it was announced the UK threat level was being lowered from 4 to 3, while another 173 people were reported to have died with coronavirus. Here's our correspondent, Juliet Bremner.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Hello.
A quiet corner to escape the recent criticism over his government's failure to prioritise education. The Prime Minister was clearly contemplating how to speed up the return to school.
Provided we can make the classroom safe, and I think we can, safe. I want every child, every pupil, every student back in September, and I'm sure we can get it done.
The Education Secretary today said he was considering expanding classroom bubbles in primary schools from 15 to 30 children. He also announced a large injection of new cash. The scheme involves a £1 billion catch-up fund for pupils in England. 650 million will be for all pupils, but the government hopes spent on small group tutorials. The remaining 350 million will be for disadvantaged pupils, but it isn't clear which children will qualify. At Forest Gate Community School, the head teacher has 1,200 pupils in one of the poorest boroughs in the country.
Levels of deprivation in an area like this is staggering, and there's loads of categories that we can define, but many of our students need something like this. It's a good pot of money for state schools to spend on their disadvantaged students, which will be really welcome in a school like ours. But I'd really like to know more details about what we can do with it and how much freedom we have with it.
There are still only a small percentage of children back in secondary school classrooms. And many parents may be asking whether earmarking such a large amount of cash for individual tutors is really the priority at this moment in time. The Hiscock family in Kent are more anxious about their children missing out on social interaction than catch-up tutorials.
I would hate to suggest, but maybe the government would be better putting that £1 billion just directly back into funding the already underfunded state primary sector, rather than just a sticking plaster like the effects of lockdown can just be fixed within a year.
Happy birthday to you.
But on his birthday, the Prime Minister is hoping £1 billion will go a long way towards helping children catch up on missed school time. Juliet Bremner, ITV News.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the UK's coronavirus alert level has finally been downgraded from 4 to 3 after a sustained fall in cases over a number of weeks. The Health Secretary Matt Hancock called it a big moment for the country after 3 months of lockdown. The pressure is now on the Prime Minister to relax the 2-metre distance rule in England.
downgrade was agreed by the UK's chief medical officers after a consistent decrease in the number of cases. The COVID alert level is measured on a 5-tier system. Today's reduction from 4 to 3 means transmission is no longer thought to be high or rising exponentially. And while the virus does remain in general circulation, it's now possible to begin the gradual relaxing of restrictions, something that's been underway for several weeks. But many fear it'll be seen as a sign to relax altogether.
The reproduction number, the R number, is still relatively close to 1. So I think we do need to still approach this with caution, and I think this is a really crucial time where we keep emphasising the need for maintaining the social distancing measures and the good hygiene practices as we start to come out of lockdown.
That said, the new level makes it more likely pubs and restaurants could be the next to open up. Businesses are desperate to know when this will happen. Ralph Findlay runs one of Britain's biggest pub chains, Marston's. Reducing social distancing from 2 metres to 1 might be the difference between opening or not.
We need that clarity now because it takes time to get pubs up and running. These are complicated businesses. The time taken to brew beer takes about 3 weeks. We've got all sorts of new protocols and guidance for our staff as to how to work safely and effectively, and people need to they need to be trained for that, and if we can't get them back now, we're just not going to be ready to open on the 4th of July.
A decision on whether to reduce social distancing is imminent, but Boris Johnson this morning hinted it is coming.
Watch this space. Watch this space.
We are all beginning to taste a little more freedom than before, but with the number of COVID cases still in the thousands, it doesn't come without its risks. Emily Morgan, ITV News.
To our political correspondent Libby Vina, who's at Westminster. After a series of setbacks, the PM seemed very optimistic today. Is he right to be?
But it hasn't been the easiest of weeks. You may remember that rather embarrassing U-turn over providing free school meals over the summer to the country's poorer pupils. And yesterday we had the Health Secretary admitting that the much trumpeted NHS app didn't work and was being abandoned. So I think the Prime Minister's blushes were being spared today when the all-important alert level was reduced from 4 to 3. You may remember that a couple of weeks ago there was quite a lot of controversy over that alert level. The Prime Minister saying that we could ease the lockdown, allowing shops to begin to reopen, even though the alert level was still at 4. Well, I think retrospectively, the scientists have now signed off on those measures, and I think that will have been greeted with a huge sigh of relief in number 10. The Prime Minister very bullish today, giving that tantalising hint that the 2 metres social distancing rule might in fact be about to be relaxed, and he even suggested that he could rule out the idea of locally could be dealt with locally. But of course that does all depend on having an adequate test and trace system, and I think at the moment we're very far away from that.
Okay, Libby, thanks very much. South Asian coronavirus patients are a 5th more likely to die with the disease than their white counterparts. That's what researchers have found. The biggest study of its kind has concluded the group, which includes people of Indian, Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage, were at higher risk because of diabetes and tended to be younger. Sejal Kari reports.
You should believe in yourself. Good things will always happen.
67-year-old Nazir Awan was a pillar of his community in Birmingham. A grandfather of 6 and a keen cyclist. He fell ill with coronavirus at the end of March. He died less than 2 weeks later.
How he got COVID, it remains a mystery to us because the kind of man he was and how cautious he was. When I went to the ward, the COVID ward, to see my dad, when I was asked to come and say my final goodbyes to him, and if I think back now, all I saw was Asian, black, Asian, black, Asian black. I didn't see any of the white community in there.
His loss and new research highlights the brutal toll